Hello, guys. Today we are talking about how I've used Scrum principles to find a new job, but not just to find a new job, but also change my career altogether from being a supply chain manager to now being a product manager in a tech startup here in Toronto.
Welcome to the Monthly Method Podcast. This is a show for solopreneurs, creators, and artists who have a burning desire to launch a project. This is for a project that is not urgent but truly important, the one your best life depends on. Your host, Paulina B., is a certified Scrum Master. She brings a proven record of launching successful projects, both professional and personal. You will hear about tested techniques that lead to calm, consistency, and results. Stay tuned to turn your idea into reality 1 month at a time.
This episode was kind of an inspiration from a question that I got from one of my listeners. In my previous episode, I asked you that I am now collecting your questions, and these questions will dictate the podcast topics going forward, for the most part, unless I want to share a very interesting idea with you. So, one of my listeners sent me this question about how I became a product manager and how I found a full-time job and all of that, because he assumed that I've probably used some of the Scrum principles in this journey. My answer is yes, you are correct. I've used Scrum principles navigating this journey, navigating this project. For me, finding a job was kind of a project. So I've looked at it as a project. Because I follow monthly method in my personal life, I had to navigate this journey through the lenses of the monthly methods, through the lenses of sprint planning. It took me a few sprints to find a job, so I'm not going to tell you that if you use Scrum, you'll find a job in 1 week. No, it doesn't work like that. But reflecting back on my journey of finding a job, that's quite interesting of where I started and where I ended up. When I knew that I had to look for a job, I dig out my resume, and my resume was for a supply chain manager because I was a supply chain manager or for an operations manager. So the skills are somewhat similar in there. My skill set could be applied in both roles. The first sprint goal was to submit a certain number of applications for either a supply chain manager or an operations manager. The definition of done for this particular goal was to have a certain number of applications submitted, and also I had the goal to send messages to 10 people on LinkedIn that I know might be hiring, saying that I'm looking for a job. That was sprint one. That's what I did. And then I didn't get a lot of responses back from my applications. Not a lot of people were hiring for supply chain manager positions from the people that I've messaged. And also, it was kind of just observing the job boards and job postings. I realized that there were not a lot of job postings for supply chain manager. I was like, okay, I'll keep it in mind for the reflection part of the sprint. And so, again, as you probably know, in the monthly method, week 4 is where you take a break and you do a lot of reflection. You ask yourself what worked and what didn't. And of course, I couldn't ignore the fact that even though I've submitted more than 100 applications, I've heard back from 3, 4 jobs, went to the interview, didn't really work well. So I couldn't ignore this fact. I couldn't ignore that the response rate on my applications is not as high. I knew that I had to do something different in the next sprint. I couldn't have the same goal of applying to a certain number of job postings and also sending LinkedIn messages to the people I know. Something had to change. And the sprint review part helped me realize that. Here is a great point about the benefits of sprint planning. You commit to doing something for a short period of time. For me, it was to commit to doing something for 3 weeks and then analyze. treat it as an experiment. So I've analyzed my results and I didn't like my results. So something had to change. For me, that something was the jobs that I was applying for. I realized that no one at that point in time was looking for a supply chain manager, not enough demand. I thought I should expand my search and see what are some of the positions that people are hiring for right now, and if my skill set can be rebranded to fit towards this new positions. I went and I looked at what people are hiring for the salary range that I wanted to earn. I found out that business analysts were in huge demand. Everyone from banks to railroad companies to tech companies, everyone was hiring for business analysts. When I looked at a bunch of postings, I realized that I have the skill set and I can actually apply to these jobs as long as I change my resume. So the first goal was to change my resume to be suitable for business analyst job postings. The definition of done for the goal was that I have a resume that has all the keywords that I need to have for a business analyst position, that I have analyzed a bunch of job postings, see what are the common themes, and then revamp my resume to match that. That was the first sprint goal. The second goal was again to apply for a certain number of job postings for the sprint. Goal number three was to find people in my network on LinkedIn who are already working as business analysts. I schedule meetings with them. The definition of done was that I have meetings scheduled on my calendar. That was sprint two. Again, revamped my resume, applied for a bunch of jobs, and the response rate was a lot higher this time around than it was in sprint one. Also, through talking with my friends who are in business analyst positions, they recommended some of the tips and tricks on how to proceed and kind of the average salary that I can expect on different levels of experience. That was very helpful. And they also reviewed my resume and gave me some helpful tips. So it was the end of sprint two. Again, I had to do my sprint review where I had to review what worked, what didn't, and what can be improved. My review revealed that applying for business analyst positions was working. It was in high demand at the time, that I should continue applying for business analyst positions. That was the part that worked. I don't remember if there were any like significant things that didn't work. I think sprint two was pretty much a good one that I should just continue doing the same thing. I was getting a healthy amount of responses back, so I was like, okay, let's keep doing what I was doing. So yeah, sprint three, I continued applying because I was spending some time on the job boards. I started seeing more and more product manager positions opening up that I didn't see before. I think, again, it was just like the job market changing very rapidly. For me, since I have a Scrum Master certification, since I already talk about Scrum on this podcast, I'm definitely very passionate about it. The skill set between business analyst and product manager is not that different, so it was easy to change my resume and now have another resume for the product operations manager position. I was only applying for product manager positions that were in supply chain, logistics, tech world, so I can connect the dots between my previous experience being a supply chain manager in a tech company and working in e-commerce and being a product manager. It was like a nice story to tell. I started applying for the business analyst positions and also started applying for product manager positions in sprint three. Again, was receiving a healthy number of responses back for the product manager positions as well. I think what was helpful was the Scrum certification and also my experience working in supply chain and logistics. And so I kind of like understood the industry, understood what was happening. That is very important for product managers to have this understanding of the business operations. The tech side is not as difficult to understand as the business side. That's how I ended up receiving interviews for product manager positions. And of course, in the very beginning, looking back at the first sprint, if I decided back then that I would just start applying for the product manager roles, I would be like, no, that's unrealistic. I don't have experience being a product manager. No one will hire me. So I started with a very safe approach, just applying for the jobs that I was doing before, maybe a little bit more on the operations side of things. Didn't really work well, then running one experiment at a time and just analyzing what was happening in the job market at that particular point in time was very beneficial. That was beginning of summer 2021. The job market was changing so fast. Every 3 weeks, the composition of job postings that I saw on LinkedIn was so different every month. So definitely analyze the job market. Treat it as one experiment at a time. If you have an idea in mind of what you need to do in order to get a job, don't think that you have to do it for months and months and months. No, just do it one sprint, maybe do it 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Then pause and analyze. Did your strategy work? Did you get a lot of response? If not, then you definitely have to change something. 2 or 3 weeks is enough to see if your strategy is working. It doesn't mean that you have to have a job in 3 weeks. No, but you need to start hearing back from recruiters, from HR people, at least start going through the first round of interviews. You should get some feedback, and 3 weeks is enough for you to get this first feedback. If you're not getting it, change it and see what you can do differently. If you are looking for a job right now, pick a strategy, pick one strategy, have 3 goals maximum. I recommend a combination of different things. Networking, so probably the definition of done here would be reaching out to, let's say, 10 people and setting up some one-on-ones with them. For me, it was easier to set one-on-ones with friends who have the jobs that I want to have and just getting to know their experience, how they found the jobs. Second type of goals would be working on your resume. Maybe if you want to change your career, one of amazing sprint goals would be for you to change your resume. I was in supply chain, so my resume was in supply chain and operations. And when I wanted to become a business analyst, I had to change the resume. And the way I did it was I analyzed a bunch of job postings, highlighted some of the phrases and keywords that I saw repeated time and time again, and just changed my experience so that I had these keywords in my resume. It takes time, so it can be a really good sprint goal to have. Another one is just simply having a goal in mind of how many applications you want to submit in every sprint. Is it 100? Is it 10? Is it 200? I worked with a professor. She wanted to be a professor in another state. Of course, she couldn't have a goal of having 100 applications submitted in a sprint. For her, I think the goal was 3 applications because when you're applying to be a professor, each application takes hours. You have to write a cover letter, you have to submit some academic work, and all of that. A feasible amount of applications she could do in 3 weeks was 3. But if you're someone who is looking for an entry job position, of course, it's like you gotta have a higher number in mind. Yeah. So set no more than 3 goals for a sprint, then commit to them for 3 weeks. On week 4, take a break. Maybe don't spend as much time submitting your applications. Take it easy, but give yourself enough white space to think about your previous sprint, what went well, what didn't go so well, and what are some of the strategies that you should continue doing in the next sprint? What are some of the strategies that you should change and how you can change them. What are some of the new experiments that you want to run in this journey of finding a new job? It's all about experiments. It's all about doing things just 3 weeks at a time and seeing what works and what doesn't. The job market right now is changing so fast. You have to see what's going on and you need to adapt your strategies based on what you've observed in the previous sprint. If you have a full-time job and you want to embark on this journey of finding a new job, the first podcast episode that you should listen is how to start side project with full-time job. For you, looking for a new job will be the side project that you want to do when you have a full-time job. Next episode for everyone that I would recommend is Sprint Retrospective for Personal Productivity. That's from September 6th. Again, in order for this journey to be very effective, you have to do the sprint reviews. You have to look what worked and what didn't. If you continue with the strategy that is not getting you a healthy amount of response back, it's going to be at least a year till you find something suitable. So definitely need to change to pivot every sprint. Another episode is Time Blocking Reduces Stress. That's from June 28th. It's all about time blocking. And I also have another one from July 12th. That's time blocking Q&A. No matter if you have a full-time job and you want to find a new job, or you don't have a job but you're actively looking for a job, there's no better tool than time blocking to fight overwhelm and frustration, because looking for a new job is frustrating. And the best way to deal with that is to have a time block every day where it's like, okay, for this 2 hours, I'm just applying for jobs. I'm not doing anything else, and I only need to spend 2 hours applying for jobs. Once you've hit those 2 hours, or once you hit the number of job applications that you want to have in a day, then you hit your definition of done, and then you can relax, you can go and enjoy your day. So you need to treat looking for a job as your full-time job. And the best way to do it is to have dedicated time blocks for each activity, for each of the 3 goals that you set up for a sprint. The last episode that I want to recommend, and probably the most important, is how to use definition of done for personal productivity. That's from March 29th. The definition of done is one of the most important Scrum concepts that you can apply for your personal productivity, especially for projects such as finding a new job, because it's so ambiguous. When it's ambiguous, like what you need to do in order to achieve this goal, it becomes very overwhelming because you always question yourself, am I doing enough? Am I doing the right things? And all of that. So the definition of done is something that you need to have for every single goal that you set for the sprint. If you want to just use a PDF file that will like have all this steps and concepts and everything, download the PDF guide. This was the story of how I applied the monthly method to not only finding a new job, but also changing my career altogether, having this new role. I'm very excited about how it worked out. I'm glad that I'm doing something that I'm passionate about. I'm glad that I'm doing it in a very interesting, fast-growing company. So, yeah, it definitely works. I'm a great example of that. I've had clients who applied the monthly method to find a new job, and it worked for them as well. There is no reason why it couldn't work for you. If you have any questions or need more clarification on this topic, send me a question through the link provided in the show notes. Okay? Have a fantastic week, everyone. I'll talk to you next Monday. Bye. Hey, before you go, I just wanted to let you know that if you want to try the monthly method for yourself, check out the guide, the free guide available at monthlymethod.com/guide. It will walk you through planning your entire week based on the core principles behind the monthly method. What do you have to lose? It's just 1 week and it's free. The link is in the show notes.